I'm at I'm at what a British person would say is Ege University in Hungary, but is actually called Esterházy Károly University in Hungarian, named after the founder of the university. So I'm here in sort of northwest Hungary. And, I'm lucky enough to work here, and I'm one of only a few native English-speaking teachers at the university. So most of the teachers are Hungarian, 99%, and a lot of the English faculty and other faculty are bilingual teachers, so there are a lot of courses taught in English at the university.
Is there much sort of SEND, special educational needs, dyslexia, sort of understanding and provision at universities in Hungary, or at least the ones that you're familiar with?
So I'm just starting to find that out, really. I don't work within the education faculty. I work within the international faculty, and I work with other faculties, but I am starting to make my links with people in the pedagogy area, and I'm also doing my conversion master's degree. Part of that is attending some of the pedagogy courses, and through doing that, I've started to learn more about their approach in Hungary and at the university. So I know a little bit about it at the university. I know a lot less about it nationally, but some of the reading that I've done has helped me understand the picture. And I would definitely say that there's a heavy investment in research and pedagogical research into special ed at the university level. It's highly respected. Yeah, and it's very, very closely out. So this university has had a long tradition. It was set up really as a teacher training college. So this university specifically has a strong link between the academic departments training teachers to be teachers. So they get a very strong pedagogical input as they train to be teachers, and academic input. So students who are going to go on to become a special ed teacher will do a 5-year master's degree, whether it's primary or secondary. And of that, you would probably say, I would say 2/3 of that is strongly in the field of specialisms within special ed. So so they are strong, very strong.
Now, from what you say, the university you're working at is a state university.
Yes,
and
correct.
I'm guessing, now I might be sort of jumping ahead of myself here, but I'm kind of guessing that if it's a state university, then the regulations and the practices it has are going to be pretty much standard nationwide. Is that?
They're heavily regulated. It's they're following a national program, exactly. There'll be different expertise that maybe you would choose as an option or as a particular field of inquiry. But in terms of a national credit level, yes, you're right.
Right. So we can kind of assume that at tertiary level, university level, and at teacher training level, Hungary is it's investing heavily into special educational needs and practices in that kind of area.
I mean, it's an assumption. It's not. I can't definitely say that. But if we're taking what I'm saying about here, and that's represented nationally, yes. And interestingly, because I'm heavily involved in what I'm trying to promote on social media wise. And I had a very interesting reply from someone on social media saying, "Oh, well, it was. I'll give you the contact, because it was actually a professor of reading at a university in the UK who replied to me and sent me an email and said actually she was really interested because Hungary has got a very strong reputation in this field." And that was good to hear, because it kind of gave a validity to what I thought. But in terms of my inquiries and experiences, it's certainly treated very seriously, and there are serious professionals at work in the field.
It's not just sort of, oh, we'll do that because we have to. It's something that they actually want to do.
Yeah, and exactly, and they're training specialists. Not that they're not doing that elsewhere, but there's definitely a field, and people are training to go into that with it in schools and be the special ed teacher.
Now, to hop across the oceans a little bit, you've also got experience in the Middle East.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I so after I moved to the Middle East in 2012, just after the Olympics, the 2012 Olympics, and I just wanted a fresh challenge, and I got a position in Qatar. So I went and worked in Qatar. It was an English curriculum school that I went to, British curriculum school, but mainly with local Middle Eastern children who were attending that school. So they were being taught in English. There was an Arabic provision, but it was an English language curriculum.
Yeah, and I'm guessing
I went there.
Arabic to English is quite a tricky one.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and I went there in the capacity of being like an English language support teacher, as in supporting their English language. So I wasn't a classroom teacher, so I could move between age ranges and support them and develop their language. And it was absolutely fascinating as an experience about learning English as a second language in the context of a mainstream type school, which was following a mainstream curriculum. And when I went out to teach there, I didn't come from a second language background, so I was sort of learning on the job about their transference, and working with children who were not meeting expectations, so they were not at expected levels.
Right.
So I was really at the kind of ground level with them, with what they were finding difficult.
And what provision was there for these kids? I mean, I'm not saying that they were necessarily dyslexic, but we based on statistics, you can assume that a number of them are going. So what kind of provision was there?
Yeah. So the basic model was the early identification of anyone who really was not meeting whatever assessed standards there were in place for a year group. So various things like they would take a Key Stage 1 SATs paper. This is internally assessed, not externally assessed. So using that as the benchmark, or using some reading tests, which we used through GL assessment. So doing a PI reading test, I think it was, that they used. And then looking at your normal distribution.
So could you explain what it is very quickly, the PI reading?
That's a progress in English test, which is age standardized. And during my time there, we moved quite quickly to doing it online. So it was a computer-based reading assessment. And that information provided us with those who were below a certain standard, a certain score on the standardized test. So between about 70 and 85, we were saying they needed some intervention. And so they were taken from other lessons, not English or maths, and given additional support for an hour a day. Probably.
And this additional support, was it? I mean, I'm going to sort of caricature certain support. Was it effectively more of the same, just extra of that, or was it a different kind of thing they were given? Yeah,
well, I mean, it depended on the teacher, to be honest, and that was really, really interesting, because in the early years, in the infant school, really, so from children who are in the preschool up to year 2, that the teachers who did that had a lot of experience, extensive experience, and a lot of that was fine and gross and fine motor control work. A lot of that work, and so then that was needed. That was really needed. So they were going back to that. So obviously that wasn't, it kind of happens in the classroom, but it's not a focus. It's not the focus. They're expected to be able to do certain things. So there was a lot of bead stringing. There was a lot of grip, a lot of catching, a lot of left hand and right hand control. So it was quite physical intervention, really, in terms of being able to get ready to study and to read. And then they were getting a lot of very intense sort of language work at the alphabet and sound level, phonics level as well. And it was working. The more intense the help, and they would be tracked, and they would only be allowed to stop having that intervention if they were starting to meet expected standards. So some students were on a quite intensive program for quite a number of years. And I never had any sense that was because the program was failing, but the level of need was quite significant.
Of course, yeah. I mean, a lifelong condition, you may need lifelong sort of interventions.
That's right.
Sorry, I was just going to say, was there ever a time when someone reached the required level, as it were, was taken off the additional interventions and then dropped further behind, or did people tend to sort of keep up once they'd
Well, of course there were examples. Of course there were examples of that. But I think that the system that I was involved in and part of, it was quite good at that, because if anyone did fall off, they were offered, and the provision was there for them to sort of go back to be supported. So it wasn't you've had it and that's it. If you needed more, you'd go back on. And the big thing I found out, and I discovered working there, is that apart from a very, very, very small percentage, the parental support for having this was very positive. It was really positive. The stigma of need was something that I thought would be more of an issue. And actually the parents were extremely grateful for the support and would willingly kind of go with what you believe to be the right thing. They sometimes expected more immediate results, and educating parents about the length of these things was important. But one of the things that I found very interesting during my time there was the external psychology services, services for providing a statement or for an assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And this was definitely a difficult area because parents needed to have some actual evidence for further provision.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be they were encouraged to go and get an external assessment. But the difficulty I found was with the nature of those, and some were good and some were not so good. And
but
it was difficult to quality control.
Yeah.
No, they were not standardized. And something that I tried to work on a bit more over my time there was at least working with ones that we felt were providing a better service and a more accurate assessment, and not just anyone. And also trying to develop a community of professionals who were sort of trusted amongst the schools for providing this, because it's such an important area. And there was some movement in that, and I think it was a period of time where that was being acknowledged as a sort of significant area of need within the country.
Yeah. I'm gonna sort of risk generalizing about a culture now, so forgive me. But you talked about the parents' attitudes when they found out their children needed help was remarkably positive.
Yeah.
Is that something to do with the sort of the Middle East, Arabic, sort of North African sort of view of sort of the if you like, the Islamic culture view of family, as much as anything else? Or am I just sort of making assumptions that might not be correct there?
The family was very essential. The family was, the family unit and the extended family unit was very strong.
Yeah.
Once the parents felt like the educational establishment was supportive, they were supportive of the professional judgment.
Right, yeah.
And so once that relationship had been established, they were very trusting of that, because there just wasn't the experience or the knowledge about why a particular member of the family might not be doing as well as they thought they should.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the community aspect of that was really important, and there was nothing ever than really good parent-teacher conferences regarding how their child was doing,
right.
and they were not worried about what you had to say. They wanted to know, and they wanted to know clearly.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? How can we help?
Could you say something that's really difficult now? I'm going to finish by asking you one very, very sort of penetrating and perhaps impossible question. You've lived and worked in Qatar. You've lived and worked in Hungary, in the education system.
Yeah.
Different parts of the education system, so secondary and tertiary.
Yeah.
But what would you say are the biggest differences in how, for instance, education and special educational needs are looked upon? Or are they remarkably similar?
Yeah. Oh, no, I think it's chalk and cheese, really. It's fascinating in terms of the difference, because what wasn't happening in Qatar that I experienced was there was no link between schooling, primary and secondary schooling, and research.
Right.
There were not teacher trainers coming in from the universities. There were universities world-class universities in Qatar, but there was nothing. There was no link at all. So a big trick was being missed, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then in Hungary, that relationship is much closer between the research and the teaching, and so there's not as much gap at all. In fact, you know, it's very strong. But the biggest difference on the other side is the funding, because these parents were able to afford in Qatar whatever was needed. So if they had to pay some extra money for that additional support, service, assessment, none of that was not an issue. So the private funding of need was there.
Yeah.
And obviously within Hungary, that is completely a burden taken by the state. So you've got a finite resource, which is obviously, as you know from the UK, you've got those real problems of getting enough people, enough children, enough help.
Yeah.
So the expertise transfer is strong, and yet the ability to continue to finance the provision is not.
I'm just thinking, if only you could put the two together.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's really, you know, that's what's needed, and it was a blessing in a way to be able to work in one system where money was not the object for the first time in my career. You know, money wasn't the thing. You were actually dealing with the thing.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, it's also a blessing to work with within a new system where obviously money is an important factor, very important. Funding is a very important factor, but the level of knowledge is really enriching and impressive. And one of the things I'm going to be doing next semester is I'm starting to teach a child development in English course. So I'm stepping into those waters for the first time with a small cohort of teachers who've chosen to learn to teach English. And one of the things that I'm going to be teaching them is the early signs of not being able to read and what that could mean, and what they could do about it. So I think that's really exciting for me, and I'm hopefully going to be able to set up some research with them to when they go into schools and see what they find out.